Okay, so this paper came in 2021 that we are trying to answer. Yeah, and the question number is 1.15. Yeah, that's the question we are answering. I am actually using this question as a guide as I'm trying to talk about market equilibrium. Okay, just a quick recap of some few points that we talked about last time. From the forces of demand, we defined demand and said it's both the willingness and capacity of the consumers to obtain the commodity that has been served on the market. Basically, combining the willingness and the capacity, right? The capability or ability and willingness coupled together. If you put these two, then they produce demand. And we made mention that willingness alone is not enough, and the capacity alone is not enough. It only becomes demand when you combine the willingness and capacity. So both the willingness and capacity put together, of course, of the consumers to obtain the commodity that has been served or provided at a ruling price. That is what demand is all about. Then we explored the relationship between the price of a commodity and the quantity of that commodity demanded, and said there is an inverse relationship between the quantity demanded and the price of the commodity in question. So if you have a commodity that you have, you look at its own price. This is what we said. And the quantities of that commodity demanded. What you will see when you draw the relationship graphically is that there will be, a downward sloping demand curve depicting a negative relationship or an adverse relationship, inverse relationship, if you may like to put it like that. So that is to say, when the price of the commodity increases, then the quantities of the commodity demanded decreases, and vice versa. Then we made mention that the graph of a demand curve, the demand curve is downward sloping. That's what we said, and explained that it's downward sloping because of the relationship, right, between price and demand. We talked about the factors affecting demand. Yeah, among the few, we talked about the on price. That is the price of the commodity. We also talked about what else did we talk about? Anybody who is able to remind the teacher? What other factors did we highlight? Like they do affect demand. You can simply turn on your mic and just participate in this. What other factors affect demand?
Yeah, I think I remember we talked about change in income.
Change in income, yeah? What else? You're still talking? You said the change in income of the consumers, that is their purchasing power, affects the demand. Is there any other factor?
Yes, there is. I'm just trying to recall.
Okay. Aziz is still recalling. Kwangu, are you able to participate, or other people, are they able to? Anyone can just turn on their mic, and submit. Okay. Anyways, we talked about the price, and we also talked about the change in income, as said by Mr. Boniface. Then we also said, we talked about the change in the prices of the related goods, right? When the prices of the related goods change, And by related goods, we are referring to both the substitute goods and the complement goods. Do you remember what was said about substitute goods? What did we say about substitute goods? Anyone who is able to remember what we said about substitute goods? Okay, so we said that substitute goods are basically the goods that we can use that are used to do the same thing. Okay, like you can, if you want to use the same word, substitute them. Understand, right? They have the same use. So we gave an example of Aloha, what's this, the washing powders we talked about, Aloha, Boom Unit, Bullet, all those washing powders. They are used to do the same thing, but they are different brands. Anyways, we talked about the complements as well. And we brought the forces of supply as well. And this was the last thing that we talked about last time. We defined what supply is and explored the relationship between price and the quantity supplied, and established that there is a positive relationship. We scored that there is a positive relationship between the quantity demanded, the quantity supplied, and the price of the commodity that is being supplied. So the relationship is positive. That is to say, when the price increases, also the quantities supplied increases. Now, what we want to do in this conversation is to bring the two forces together, all right? When you combine supply and you also, right, combine demand on the same graph, then you bring what we call market equilibrium. Okay, this is what we call market equilibrium. Now, market equilibrium simply means when the market clears, all right? That's the word that we use. The clearing of the market is same as market equilibrium. What is market equilibrium? Basically, market equilibrium means when the demand equals supply, okay? When demand equals supply, then it means that the market has cleared. When the quantities demanded equal to the quantities supplied, at that point, we say that the market has cleared or the market is in equilibrium, okay? That's what we mean by market equilibrium. I repeat, using the same words, I am saying market equilibrium simply means having a situation where the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied are equal, right? In other words, the point where demand equals supply. We can depict this relationship graphically, and this is how it comes. We know that this is how it comes out. There is an inverse relationship between price and the quantity demanded, that is by a downward sloping, demand curve. So you have the downward sloping demand curve, and we said the law of supply shows that there is a positive relationship between the quantity supplied and the price, of that commodity being supplied. For that reason, the supply curve is upward sloping. That's what we scored. We can put these together, then the graph will sit like this, as you are seeing it on the screen. Are you able to see the screen and can you hear me clear?
Yes.
So on the vertical axis, you see the price. Then on horizontal axis, you see the quantity. So what you put on the horizontal axis, you see it's the quantity, and then on the vertical axis, we put the price. Then you will see that there is this price now that leads the market into clearance, okay? This price that leads the market into clearance, or that brings the market into equilibrium, in other words, okay? That is in other words. That price is called an equilibrium price. Are we good? Can you hear me? We're saying that the price that brings the market into equilibrium, or the price that helps the market to clear, is what we call the equilibrium price. You've gotten that one, yeah? Does someone, is there anyone who has a question at that point? Any question? I am now entertaining some questions. Are there any questions? Okay. Assuming the silence, is that a question?
Yes, I wanted to find out, since you've said the price, okay, I've understood the equilibrium price. What about quantity?
That's where I'm going.
Oh,
So
all
is there
right.
any question based on what I've already said? Okay, assuming the silence means all is well, ceteris paribus, then we can go on and say, now there is this quantity, that brings the market into clearance. That quantity is called the equilibrium quantity, okay? We call this the equilibrium quantity. So at the same time, you have the equilibrium quantity and the equilibrium price. These two, they're they that we can find the price and the quantity, okay, when the market has cleared. This is the price that you find, okay? So you have the price and the quantity that brings the market into clearance as the equilibrium price and the quantity respectively. Okay, we have scored those points now. Are there any questions again? If there are no questions, then now we can explain this relationship mathematically, okay? Remember, I said in economics, we explain the relationships verbally, where we use the words of the mouth to say, there is a negative relationship between demand and price, positive one between the price and quantity supplied, and the market equilibrium means when the market is able to come when the demand is equal to supply. That is using the words. But a model is one way of organizing thoughts around theory. It is actually a compact way. So what we do in modeling here, we're going to use a graph to just summarize this relationship. And we have done this. So the other way of doing it is math. Math is hard. You can't do without math. We explain the same thing, but mathematics. We have explained these relationships verbally. We have explained graphically. So we need to do it in mathematics. This is the idea behind what. Okay. Now, let's explain this. Now, listen carefully. We have already scored that at equilibrium, the quantity supplied equals to the quantity demanded. I want you to pay attention. The quantity supplied equals to the quantity demanded. Now, there are some situations when you are given the functions, that is now mathematical. You're given two functions, the demand function and the supply function. So you are asked to find the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity, okay? I want you to pay attention. I'll talk about the concept of, consumer surplus and producer surplus. But as for now, let's talk about this. We are saying that we are given the supply function and the demand function. So now what you do is when you're asked or required to find the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity, you just need to understand these 2 points. At equilibrium, the quantity supplied equals to the quantity demanded, and the price for supply is equal to the price for demand. If you can have these two, then you are okay. Now, before I go any further, I want to explain again, and let me score in your hearing that you see, these functions, you can have the ordinary functions or the inverted functions, right? So the ordinary function starts with the Q. That's an ordinary function. Even for the demand, when it starts with the Q, maybe QD, the quantity demanded is equal to certain number, as a function of price, right? I am saying that when the demand function starts with the quantity equal or expresses the quantity as a function of the price, meaning you have the price on the right-hand side of the equation. At that point, this is an ordinary demand function. But if you have the price made the subject of the formula, right? If you make the price the subject of the formula in the same demand function, or technically we can say you express price as the function of quantity demanded, then at that point, we have an inverse demand function. Let me repeat this again. I am saying you may have the ordinary demand function and an inverse demand function. The difference being the ordinary demand function has quantity as the subject of the formula. Or technically, we can say it expresses quantity as a function of price. Then the inverse, demand has price made the subject of formula. If you want to sound technical enough, you can say it expresses price as a function of the quantity demanded. Why is it important that you understand these two differences? It's very important because at some point, an examiner may give you the two functions that are different. It may give you maybe the one for supply, ordinary, then the one for demand is inverted. Now, if you have the two different functions, the ordinary one and the inverted one, you can't equate them. You get what I mean? Eh? You can't set them equal to each other. So what you do is you make sure that the functions given take the same form. This is the message I am sending. Ensure the functions they take the same form. That is to say, if they are inverted, they start with price. That is what we mean when we say they are inverted. At that point, then they both have to be inverted. If they are ordinary, that is to say they start with quantity, both of them have to be ordinary. That is when you can equate them. Okay? Having scored that, then I've already said you just set them equal to each other. We need to examine these functions that we have here. Number one, and the question is reading as I read in your hearing. Suppose that the demand-supply equation for good X is given as follows. So there is the demand function right on the screen. You have the supply function on the screen as well. And the question says a price of 12 would cause a surplus. Is that true or false? Now, there's a lot of math that has to be done for you to find the correct answer here. So first of all, we need to establish the equilibrium quantity. Those are steps, right? Establish the equilibrium quantity and the equilibrium price. When you do that, we need to graph those relationships. We produce the market equilibrium, condition. When we have that condition, we will go further and find what we call consumer surplus and producer surplus. Okay? Those are the steps. I do repeat. Let me repeat one more time. The steps are as follows. We need to find the equilibrium quantity and the equilibrium price. First step. Then from there, we'll need to graph the functions on the same graph and produce the equilibrium condition. Once we do that, then we can easily go ahead and solve for the, consumer surplus and producer surplus. Yeah, those are the steps. Having outlined the steps, we can continue. And before we start with the first one, where we establish the equilibrium quantity and the equilibrium, a price, let me pick questions if at all there are any questions. Are there any questions? Do we have any question? Okay.
No,
all right. Assuming that everyone says there are no questions, then we can proceed. And thanks for the feedback. When you look at the two functions that we have, the demand and supply one, what do you think? Are these inverted functions or the ordinary functions? Riding on the explanation that I just gave, a few minutes ago.
I think they're inverted functions.
Yeah, these are inverted functions. And both of them inverted, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. So then we can easily set the price for the demand function equal to the price for the supply function, and so. Now, what if the other function is the ordinary, the other one is inverted? Here, what you do, you just make one the subject of the formula. If you want this inverted demand function, right? It is here. P is equal to 20 minus 0.25 Q. You want to make it ordinary, meaning you make Q the subject of the formula. From math, you learn that you can you can make Q the subject of the formula by bringing it on the left-hand side of the equation, yeah? You can have it cross the equal sign, so you shall have 0.25 Q, quantity that shall equal 20 minus price, because price is crossing to the right-hand side of the equation. And then you divide through by 0.25. Divide through by 0.25, or you divide both sides by 0.25, so that you can make Q the subject of the formula. So what is 20 divided by 0.25? $20 over 0.25. What does the calculator give you?
$20 divided by 0.25. It gives us 80.
80. Thanks. So I have 80 minus, this is 1. There is an invisible 1 here. That's what we scored from, basic mathematics, right? From basic process of algebra, that there is an invisible 1 here where there is P, yeah? So you could simply divide, 1 divided by 0.25. And what do you find?
It's 4.
It's 4. So you have 4P, right? This is the demand function. That is ordinary now. You get that?
Yes.
This one is an inverse one. This is an ordinary one. You need to understand both of them so that you have no problems. Let's invert the supply one. The supply one, it should be easier. Supply one, it says P is equal to 0.25 Q. You want to Q the subject of the formula. It means you divide through by 0.25, right? By 0.25, isn't it? There is 1 here, Divide by. So Q is equal to what? 4P. Right. Is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it is 4P. So now this is an ordinary supply function. Then at this point, we can easily solve this relationship. We'll use both of the conditions I've given you. When prices are equal or when quantities are equal. Which one should we start with? Since we have all the two functions, we are trying to look for the function for the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity. Which one should we start with?
I think we should use the first one.
The prices?
Yes.
Okay, if you cut the prices, so you say the price for demand shall be 20 minus 0.25 Q. That is the function that should be equal to the one for supply is 0.25 Q, right? And then from here, what do you think we can do? Collect like terms together, yeah?
Yes.
We can collect like terms together, make formula. You shall have 0.5 Q, that should be equal to 20, yeah? And divide through by 0.5 by 0.5 to have Q the subject of the formula. And so what is 20 divided by 0.5?
20 divided by 0.5. 0.5. 40.
That is 40. So it is caused that the quantity, the equilibrium quantity is what? Is 40, yeah? Did you get that one?
Yes.
That is the equilibrium quantity. The equilibrium quantity is 40. Now that the equilibrium quantity is 40, what is the equilibrium price then? In any of the two functions, either the supply one or the demand one, where there is Q replaced by putting 40 or substitute 40, what do? Which one do you pick? The demand one or the supply one? You can pick the demand one shall have 20 minus 0.25 Q. And where there is Q, we put what? 40, like that. So we are looking for the equilibrium price. What shall be the equilibrium price? What is the equilibrium price? What is 0.25 times 20? It should be 10, yeah?
0.25 times 40.
Mm-hmm.
25. Okay, just a minute. 0.25 times 40. That's 10.
Yeah, so that the equilibrium price can be 10, right? So the equilibrium price is 10, right?
Yes.
Yeah. You can still choose to substitute the quantity into the supply function as well. You'll find the same answer if you want. You'll say the price is equal to 0.25 Q and your Q is 40. So you say 0.25 times 40, price is equal to 10. That is when you use the supply function. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Having scored all that, then now we can still use the ordinary functions and check if find the same answer. Ordinary function, quantity supplied, quantity demand, that equals what? 4P. And we are solving for price, isn't it?
Yes.
What are we looking for? We're looking for we are making price the subject of the formula so that you You can have 8p equal to what? 80, right? And you divide through by 8 so that p can be equal to 10. You've seen that it gives the same answer, yeah? Whether
Yes.
you use the embedded functions or you use the ordinary functions, you get the same answer. Maybe the difference should just be highlighted again. We need to understand the differences, yeah? This between the ordinary one and the inverted one. Yeah. Okay. If you have the price now, you need the quantity, right? To find the quantity, the equilibrium quantity, you could just, substitute the equilibrium price into any of the demand functions, the ordinary demand functions for that. Quantity demanded, you can even use the quantity demanded function. Which function do you want to use to start with? If we started with the demand one, then what is the price? The price being 10, we shall have 80 minus 4 times 10 being 40, so that the quantity can be maintained as 40, the equilibrium quantity. You've seen that the equilibrium quantity again is still 40. Right.
Yes.
We can still
Yeah.
use the supply function where it's just say Q is equal to 4 times the price is 10. So it's easy. Quantity shall be 40. Equilibrium quantity. All right. Now, having scored, having explained all these relationships, then what do we need? You know that if you are to do this graphically now, that is the second step. This is what we shall have. The demand function downward sloping and the supply function upward sloping. The equilibrium price being what?
We found 10.
10. And then the equilibrium quantity, 40. Right. That is
Yes.
40, the equilibrium quantity. That's what. Now, I should be quick to score that there are intercepts, right? You should have the numbers in the intercepts. There will be the intercepting price and the intercepting quantity. The intercepting price is found by, setting on the demand function. If you're from the demand function side, you look at the demand function. You could easily find the price here by doing what? By setting Q, the subject of the Q equal to 0, the quantity equal to 0. Let me repeat that, you've not gotten it. I have said that for you to find the intercepting price, on the demand function, set quantity equal to 0. All right, then you shall have price. So when you have this demand function, you shall just say Q is equal to 0, equal to what? 80 minus 4p. I found this one, eh? So that you can have 4p equal to what? To 80 by 4 by 4. What is the intercepting price? It's 20, yeah?
Yes.
Yes. So the intercepting price is 20. That's how you find it. You simply go to the function 0 in the price. Now, the other question should how to find quantity. There should be the intercepting quantity again this side. How do you find it? You do the opposite, all right? Now you will set price equal to 0, okay? Get the demand function and set price equal to 0. So you shall do 80 minus 4 times price is 0 So 4 times 0, 80 minus 0, which shall be 80, yeah? Yeah. All right. So that's what I was saying that the intercepting price is 20, the equilibrium pricing. Now we needed the intercepting quantity. So you get the demand function, you set now price equal, you set 0, and we found that so you put 80 there. Then now, if you have done all, then determine whether there is a consumer surplus or a producer surplus at each given price. Now we are given the price equal to 12. Let's say the price equal to 12. It is slightly above the equilibrium. Let's have the price equal to 12. You've seen it. The price equal to 12. What is it that is going? What is it that is going to bring? It is going to cause consumer surplus. And your question is, what is consumer surplus? Right. Just a quick reminder on what consumer surplus is. We say that consumer surplus is basically, the difference between what one is willing to pay for the commodity and what they actually pay. That difference between how much you are willing to pay and what you actually pay is what you call consumer surplus. For example, you want to buy a laptop, right? That is a personal computer. Your budget is 10,000 kwacha. And so you go in town, you find that same computer, same quality, same features, or same specifications is costing 80,000. There is a difference of 2,000 between how much you are willing to pay and what you've actually paid. So you were willing to pay 10,000, but you just ended up paying 8,000. The 2,000 is consumer surplus. Now, graphically, you can represent the consumer surplus by the area of this triangle. The triangle that is bound by the equilibrium price and the demand curve. So you have the equilibrium price, the vertical axis, and the the demand curve. So this triangle is what we are talking about. So what is the area of this triangle? How do you find the area of the triangle? The area of a triangle, colleagues, is basically found by saying half. The formula is half, base times height, right? Half base times height. What is the base? The base is from 0 here to 40. So base is 40. You say half times 40 times the height being the difference between the maximum price and this equilibrium price there. Yeah, which is in this case, the difference between 20, right? 20 minus 10. That will give us 10, right? It gives us 10.
Yes.
So you have 10. You have 10. So you say 400 divided by what? By 2. Because 40 times 10 is 400, yeah? Divided by 2. This is equal to half of 400. Half of 400 is basically 200. So the area or the area bound or represented by that triangle is 200 units squared. So the consumer surplus shall be 200 units squared. That is the consumer surplus, 200 unit squared. What about producer surplus? Now the producer surplus is represented by, the area of this triangle that is bound by the supply curve, the demand, the equilibrium price, and the vertical axis, this triangle. So you find the area of this triangle, which is the inverted triangle, right? So the base of this triangle will still be the same from 0 up to 40. That will still be the same, but the height will be from 0 up to the equilibrium price. That will be your height, which is still what? It is still 10, yeah?
Yes.
Times half. So it will still gives you 200 units squared. That is for the producer surplus. I have scored these 2 points and 2 concepts. The producer surplus is basically the difference now between how much the producer is willing to pay and what they actually pay. How much are you willing to spend, or like when you're producing something? Let's say they are producing something, they want to charge this price. A producer wants to charge a computer, personal computer for that matter, 15,000, right? Then they end up charging it, higher than what they were willing to charge. You get it, right? They successively charge it at 18,000. That difference now between how much they have charged it and how much they are willing to charge is what you call producer surplus. Okay. So now to answer our question as we conclude, does the price at 12 cause a surplus when the price is put above the equilibrium? Definitely it causes a producer surplus. Right? We've gotten that one, right?
Yes.
Yes, because the producer now is actually producing at a price higher than what they were actually willing to supply. Okay. Are there any questions? Anybody can just ask their questions.